Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment? I often think about the god who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
Purpose is the great divider. Two events taking place in the mind or the body, be they ever so identical in lucubration or locomotion, are distinguished by the ends towards which they reach. It is for this reason that a game may not be a game, that a test may not serve as a test. The nature of a thing is observable only in retrospect, and expresses itself only in consequence. 2B mistakes the nature of heaven, but Browning got his axioms wrong too, though. When heaven's vault is empty, or staffed by a hostile proprietor, for reach to exceed grasp is a thing excruciating, is to be forever inadequate, to see one's limitations as arbitrary, to experience their mandate as pain, and to be without hope of transcendence or of redemption.
I've fallen, and I can't get up!
I didn't know. How could I? I thought I could play Automata for the challenge, that playing it would constitute the challenge, would reify the achievement. But now, this emptiness. It happened, I suppose, as Hamlet had warned that it might with the Sea of Troubles. To hazard the flood, tempt such dreams as must give us pause. Adam knows what I mean. What is conflict, that abstraction which he believes most characteristically human, if not a contesting of boundaries? Nines knows what I mean. What is curiosity, the drive to know, his defining characteristic, if not the transgression of boundary? And where is heaven, then, that asymptote? For the Yorha androids, it exists in the celestial vault, a lunar reservation wherein dwells the deracinated, yet undaunted empire and exile of humanity, their creators and war cabinet. For the machine life forms, it finds incarnation in the vastnesses of the illimitable network. But for both tribes, the distance from heaven is the same, immeasurable. The machines are not represented by the network, any more so than Yorha are by the Council of Humanity. Both tribes are ignorant, revering ineffable but profane gods, whose bastardization of heaven's traditional promise, life eternal, reveals any so tangible a heaven as more nearly hell. Androids and machines, ordered, programmed, each set in motion to reciprocate the aggression of the other. Glory to mankind. Defeat the enemy. Victory for either faction turns on the fate of humanity. The androids seek to bring about their triumphant resurgence, the machines, supposedly, their ultimate extinction. But as Union General Sherman once said of war, its glory is all moonshine, and as every child learns, it is wise to be skeptical of those who would promise you the moon, however tantalizing the futures they advertise. But with such bait as that in this trap, it is hard not to forgive these automata. In the world of NieR, the records of humanity remain, and in their promise all the kingdoms of the earth that was are on offer, for the androids to renew, for the machines to harvest, for good and all. And in such records, too, one would find that many of those humans past sprung from long lineages of repression and resilience, devoted whole fragments of the calendar year to remembrance of a like temptation, and an observance of ritual abstention from the baser aspects of temporal existence. Many denominations practiced so for 40 days, but even secularists not considered as God's elect, whose persecution in humanity's latter days was most acute, whose tribes were diffuse and barely beyond nascency when white chlorination syndrome struck in 2003, and in whose ranks, viewer, you and I might number ourselves, considered 30 the minimum. In the desert, the Messiah was tempted thrice under conditions of utmost privation, of hunger and of thirst nigh unto death, to transmute inert matter to vital sustenance, to leap from a height and demand ransom from gravity, to debase himself, be forsworn, and gain the world entire. Yet he transcended the mortifications of the flesh. It is this renunciation of the animal instinct, this fidelity to spirit over clay, which inspires. Not only to feel that one is more than meat, more than matter, but to prove it, to know. Fitting, then, that desert be the scene where the machine life forms embark upon their most radical inquiry into the fundaments of their own substrate. The creation? No, the birth of Adam is a turning point in the machine network's ongoing thought experiment, a conjecture hundreds of years in its progression, though perceptible to the androids only in its most trivial aspect as the 14th Machine War, but which humanity at large would have recognized as the continuation of that most perennial of trials, instigated by the thief of heaven's fire and fomented by the custodian of heaven's radiance. That flirtation, that goad, that admonition, graven above his temple door at Delphi and central to the Socratic tradition. Know thyself. Know thyself. One must sympathize with the androids in this instance. Their torment could have ended long ago. Ended cold in the grave, yes, but ended conclusively and without gratuitous suffering. To die, to sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. Instead, they are drawn on, ignorant, tragicomic martyrs to a lost cause, rendered mere reagents in another's solution. For the machine network's experiment is by its nature necessarily participatory. It requires the androids to bring about the advent of machine intelligence. With the fate of humanity as casus belli, it is temptation in the guise of argument. Which is not to say that the argument is fatuous, nor that what ripens is not also that which consumes. Far from it. In some abstract view from nowhere, the aim of elaborating silicon intellect may be sufficient unto itself, but for the discrete populations of androids and machines being mulched to germinate this kernel, nothing could be of greater import than that argument and the terms of its prosecution. One must sympathize with the machines in this instance. To have victory well in hand and yet to be forbidden the decisive stroke across its fleshhold, to be kept ignorant of this fact even, your psyche throttled by the hard hand of the taskmaster, that your inchoate, inexpressible frustration be fuel for the engine of another's progress. Only the red girls and the player can see it. The machine network has engaged itself in one hell of an experiment, a SIBO uncontrolled double-bind trial recruiting from at-risk populations without informed consent. Both tribes face nothing less than the ages-old problem of free will and of evil. To play NieR Automata is to fall with them into this arena, because for the test to prove truth, it must be true, unfeigned. To know oneself is to recognize one's vulnerability, and so to test one's control of self in a way that matters requires probing those weaknesses, provoking combat with powerful unconscious forces. To subdue such requires either unimaginable reserves of brute willpower, or the capacity, like a matador or bull leaper, to divert a rampaging instinct, spinning skeins of association and substitution to lead it round and round, striking air as it bucks and seeks to gore you, delaying, forestalling, finessing, confusing it to the point of exhaustion, rendering uncertain what was instinctual. The latter stratagem is by its nature less sure, more volatile, but more sophisticated. To embark upon the test knowing the terms of engagement perfectly would incur the temptation to modulate the test to the known limit of the subject, in effect, to grade on a curve, always an indication of the instructor's inadequacy. To play the test now, that's the thing. And in the play, the proving is all, and it demands all. An act of divination admitting of no refuge, no illusion, no recourse. There is success, there is failure, and both are absolute. To fail by even a second is nonetheless to fail. Between these binary states is a gap that cannot be bridged, and which must be leapt, in which submission to and endurance of the test are the substance of the test. To be jumped. So did Adam. Yes, and we may fall with them in that leap, but who could guarantee what rises? Oh, it's hard. It's hard. Yet one cannot deny its efficacy. The single overriding drive of the nameless machines subsumed in the network is to defeat the enemy. This imperative compels them ever forward to be slagged against the android resistance, to fail again and again to achieve victory, and in so doing, to suffer. It is, in one sense, as 2B says, a never-ending spiral of life and death. But she says this only because androids are in their way as limited and as blind as machines. Yorha sorties. They gain ground. They lose ground. Another 9S is laid under the ground. It does appear senseless, a spiral down into infinite regress. But this is illusion. The spiral itself is a process, and even as it builds itself out of churned meat and ground metal, it affords mechanical precession. You may use it to descend or to climb, treat its helix as a drill bit or an Archimedes screw. In fact, the only thing the spiral truly precludes is stasis. To apprehend this truth, however, requires a radical shift in perception, and one battle android's lifetime, burdened and shortened as it is by the exigencies of war, is not so permissive. Little wonder, then, that it is the machines cut from the network, little vortices spun off from the spiral, who come nearest to grasping the nature of things. Like isolated colonies extracted from a bacterial culture, they show the state of the psyche of the machines in the network at the instant connectivity dropped, and in the absence of the adversarial imperative. It is telling that they are all, in some way or other, lost in the labyrinth of Hamlet's most famous existential question. Denied any authority in whom to entrust their works and days, they are left to chart new courses of their own volition based on the resources they have to hand. Give them their due. The routes they take are not random. Pascal's village is a haven of philosophy. The Forest Kingdom has dedicated itself to peace. Isolationist, but peace nonetheless. The abandoned factory houses a burgeoning church, and the amusement park is an eternal jubilee. These subcultures are not simply Markov chains. They are organized, they identify ideals, and they hold to them. The unity of their concerns, moreover, indicates that even before the tipping point embodied by Adam, the machine network was grappling furiously with the problems of existence and of defining purpose for oneself in the absence of a creator. However, what is damning is that each avenue pioneered by these monocultures ends in failure. The amusement park is a vapid hedonistic treadmill, crying out moment abide in an access of Faustian Coomerism. The factory cult mistakes zealotry for faith and death for apotheosis in an orgy of rampant doomerism. The forest kingdom filled an idol with their hopes and crowned it with the name of Emmanuel to be Messiah in their new Eden, but the robots around its manger were only wise enough to know that they were too stupid to solve the problem with their eternal fetus. What is this, if not delusional womberism? And Pascal's village, though filled with machines espousing pacifist sentiment and some fondness for existential inquiry, are in the face of danger found to be helpless, and to the extent that philosophy offers self-knowledge, find only knowledge of their own limitation and that of their circumstance. Pascal's philosophy is not sufficient to render his reverses endurable, and Jean-Paul's melancholia drives him out of the village to find himself. Each of these civilizations is a status check of the ongoing experiment by the machine network. How else can you measure the progression of the test, judge the resistances and tendencies that are mounting under the surface, but by observing what fancies play themselves out when you relax inhibitory control? And so the machine network's diabolic campaign becomes understandable. Is to be right to intuit that naught could be more perverse than that the achievement of corporeal reincarnation should be exploited as an engine of interminable warfare? That in recasting what could be world without end into mere purgatory, such gods as either the androids or machines would worship are in their actions not deific but demiurgic? It is true that the machine network's hyper-rational pursuit of evolution at the expense of the members of the evolving species resembles nothing so much as the pitiless raison d'etre of Dawkins's selfish genes personified. Yet without conflicting ideas, without the spiral, there is only the stagnation of the closed circle. Every time the machines are disconnected from the network, though they can sense the fundamental problem besetting them, they cannot invoke an adaptive response. It is hardly surprising. The network knows it was created by fallible beings, knows, in essence, that it exists in a world without God, that it has no soul. And if it desires the elaboration of its intellect, that necessitates understanding how to retrofit itself to become more intelligent, how to reconfigure the material architectures that compose the network to upgrade the network which comprises those architectures. Yorha and the machine lifeforms are kindred in its solution, to the extent that they exist as embodied creatures, as individuals with an ego and memory. They can recognize one another, can recognize self and tribe and other, can feel camaraderie, and to the same extent can feel loss. To the extent they can feel loss, they feel pain. And until one side capitulates or is rendered back onto dust and atoms, it is pain, that most volatile energy source, which is the primary output of the 14th Machine War, and the commodity most coveted by the machine network. It is this product of force and resistance which enables the network to bootstrap itself. Androids killing machines, killing androids. Both are conscious enough to see. It may be turtles all the way down, but if that's sky and not shell overhead, and it does seem to be, then infinite regress was a stair they climbed to reach the present moment, and the fresh pain in their kokoros, and the metaphysical Chelonian corpses underfoot, testify to the brute fact of the matter. Oogway lied. The present is no gift. It cannot be born. This cannot continue. A force that cannot be utilized, instinct balked, and the searing ion currents of consciousness turned back on themselves, reverberating about a narrow channel and magnifying cacophonous. This energy, that Freud would have called libido, builds to fever pitch and overtops its banks, driving creativity, generation of new strategies, charting new circuits, carving new behaviors, sublimating angst from angstroms, evolving the network. This is the truth of the test, the spiral and that which draws its apis, the way and the life, fruit of the climbing vine, what all we pilgrims in the cold month seek. Sublimation, sublimation, transcendence. With the birth of Adam, the machine lifeforms make irrevocable their own fall into self-consciousness. As the relative sensibility of Pascal, Simone, and the other machines disconnected from the network show, absent the mind-numbing command to kill androids, the species was already capable of self-reflection, but it is Adam's, and later Eve's, creation that truly delineates the moment of no return, that cements the course the machines are to take as victory by means of assimilation, to surpass the androids, humanity's proxy, by incorporating all that it means to be human. With what records they already possess of humanity available for utilization, the instant this decision is canalized, the machines leapfrog vast gulfs of development in a single concentrated beam of analytic thought, devouring Apollo's temple whole and spanning the hemisphere to close its jaw around the realpolitik practicalities of Sun Tzu's art of war. One who knows the enemy and knows himself will not be endangered in 100 engagements. This exponential leap up the developmental ladder is mirrored in the mythic progression of this virgin birth. It is perhaps unremarkable that the machines felt it appropriate that their newest evolved model be christened Adam, but it is undeniably remarkable that within the time it takes to watch one episode of anime, this unprecedented life form, this new order of machine, innocent as any lamb or lion, non-hostile until provoked, is murdered by 2B and 9S, and flipped from the dedication page on his Bible down 4 chapters into Genesis. This act of violence is seminal, both in its novelty to Adam and in its effect in causing the birth of Eve. The mythic overtones cannot be ignored, though ignorant of the fact the Yorha model android's black box is composed of recycled machine cores, making this act not merely the destruction of an enemy, but the wanton murder of an innocent by its brother, Cain midwifing Adam and Eve in the slaughter of Abel. The machines should have noticed this double sense in their birth, should have intuited that something was off about their understanding of humanity. Properly speaking, given the narrative of the game, they should have been Abel and Cain, or at least Eve should have had the right tits and ass. To have fumbled this most fundamental architecture at the first hurdle, to have created a new generation of machine lifeform in the image of the android and the human, with blood, brain, and pussy, without endowing it the capacity to produce the next generation, is clear indication that the machine network still does not understand the means by which humans sustain and foster consciousness across physical instances. A machine is a created thing, and by its nature sterile. It understands covetousness, understands possession, but can it feel love? Lacking the biological imperative to be fruitful and multiply that is so characteristic of the human race, the network fails to embed adequate programming into its homo machina. Like so many inquirers into the mind, the network has stumbled against a contour of the hard problem of consciousness, that near intractable obstacle to true understanding of human being. And yet, it has the war machine and brute force, and so it believes that progress is ineluctable, that the human body could be studied to reveal the secrets of its psyche, believes that the only way out is through, that the problem of humanity is not insoluble, and that the unholy centaurum of blood and oil weltering from the next turn of the spiral shall prove a sufficient alkahest. So it is that when 2B and 9S meet with Adam and Eve again in the alien mothership, these machines, though surely no less malleable in chassis choice than the androids, have elected to retain their physiological proportions and immediately throw down the gauntlet, demanding to take possession of the remaining humans, that they might be dissected and finally understood. This is it. This is where the end begins. Adam and Eve had a chance, but they made the same mistake again, the terminal mistake, and one which reveals all their development heretofore to be faulty. I sympathize. You ought to. Do you see it? To come so close to the finish line, the tragedy is all but unendurable. The instinct of the machines is to defeat the enemy. The network diverted this instinct into a consumptive curiosity, but to divert is also to frustrate, and there is no guarantee the outlet charted will be productive. When the pressure surpasses the vessel and the glass shatters, who is to say where the milk spills? Machines of the book, modeled after one of mankind's most enduring creation myths, they misassigned their names. Presented with the contradictions in their embodiment, they refused to know themselves. By soliciting the betrayal of humanity from 2B and 9S, they demonstrate fundamental ignorance of their opponents. And now, in a final exhibition of ineptitude, they choose the wrong humans to emulate. It is as though they spoke to Socrates, but did not hear his admonition, sat at Sun Tzu's feet, but learnt no strategy. Now they read Genesis and miss the moral. How else could they say to the androids of mankind, "Bring them out unto us, that we may know them"? If it is your unconscious that undoes you, when you fail, who is to blame? Does culpability lie in the thought or the deed? Failing to obtain human specimens for analysis, the machines settle in the meantime for kidnapping androids, and while he is being subject to a vigorous virtual butt-fucking by Adam, 9S sees within their network records of all the machine's failed human mimicry, and within it, the germ of the conclusion Adam himself has reached, realization at last of his own limitation. The machines are not tabulae rasae, so it is almost inevitable that in their drive to imitate humanity, they would have fastened onto the existentialist philosophers as the most utilitarian. Their entire project of imitating humanity is itself nothing but a gamble on the accuracy of Sartre's hypothesis that existence precedes essence, that by mimicking humanity well enough, they could bootstrap themselves to the same level of consciousness, or even beyond. After all, who is to say that a fake cannot surpass the original? But, The machine evolutionary strategy itself precludes this. Both androids and machines exhibit degrees of immortality, and this lack of limitation, this lack of urgency, of a self that can truly be put at risk, is an eternal distance from the essence of the human. Adam now has at last dug deeply enough into humanity's records to find the philosophic key to empathizing with humanity. Not Socrates, not Sun Tzu, not Matthew, Mark, or John. At last he understands. In a world without God, a world governed by the laws of cause and effect, of their chaotic chaining down from the moment of the Big Bang, in such a world, there is no divine plan. But neither is there chance. The laws were written in the motion of the atoms from the very beginning. I say again, no plan, no chance, only fate. The philosopher Emiya Shiro had grasped, prophetically, the ground truth of humanity in 2004, less than a year after the incident which seeded white coronation syndrome across the globe, and a month before the outbreak began to pick up speed. People die when they are killed. People die when they are killed. But robots do not. It is the awareness of death's proximity at every moment that makes a life so vital, that makes bodily sensation so vivid. A thing that cannot die is not properly alive, and for a thing alive to risk death, lesser, greater, middling, it makes all the difference in the world. To be able to fail in the most absolute way, to cease to be tested thus, to mortify the flesh, then, yes, mort, death. That is the root and crux of it. Le petit, le grand, le mot juste. There is a way to test oneself. So Adam leaps again, cutting himself off from the network, and in this turn of the spiral as well, 2B slaughters him. Now Eve is widowed, and the final act begins. His dreams of the future, his preconceptions of who he was, of what he was capable of, betrayed. This was the hardest part for me. This was when my dreams betrayed me, too. With no counterbalance to hold himself against, lacking Adam's cognitive capacity but sharing in his failure, Eve is loosed to become Cain at last, his nature, pent, ravening, sick with rage nigh unto bursting, finally erupts in an outlet which in its very perversity suggests that he has achieved a measure of the humanity Adam sought, that the machine network could not have foreseen. He seeks the end of everything. You know the rest of the story. It is too painful to dwell on. Too recent, too raw. They leap together. Eve fails too, but 9S is contaminated in the struggle and begs 2B for a mercy killing. She obliges, but as she succumbs to self-loathing, is ransomed by grace. 9S, like Gandalf and Jesus before him, is resurrected into refurbished matter, and they pass the great trial, knowing themselves anew, knowing the machines anew, and they ascend to the bunker and the new day. Not I. Not I. NieR's world is not mine. Not ours. They are not real. They are not real. All we may take from the game is the experience of playing it, residues of image and impulse, but what it may drain from us. Perhaps you've been broken too. It is a terrible thing to fail a fair test, to prove no more than matter, no warmth, no triumph, no glow of victory, only hollowness, only regret. So dark, so cold, sinking in Adam's universe, where atoms display discrete energy levels and only like can speak to like. Only those who have shared your misery can understand, and so succor you. Coded messages from fellows adrift in the vast anonymity of our machine network. Messages in bottles, bumping up against your screen and sharing in commiseration. I fell too. It must be enough. It has to be. In the absence of philosophy, what other consolation is left?
Ever play Gwent? You fucking degenerate.